We're back in session. We're ready for our next case, and I believe that is Mr. Corley.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Corley, Angola needs your camera needs to be on.
I'm sorry.
There you go. All right, Mr. Corley, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
Robert Corley Jr., 425-910.
All right, Mr. Corley, and let me introduce our today. Here in support, we have the Parole Project, Mr. Myers, Tanya Hachowski, your sister, Tasha Lacobin Clay, Robert Corley Sr., Kevin Hart, Evelyn Butler, Reginald Watts, Brandy Payne, Clay Shell, and Haley Hachowski. And you are represented by counsel. Let me ask Ms. Douglas, please introduce yourself for the record.
Yes, thank you. My name's Emma Douglas on behalf of Mr. Corley.
And we also have here in opposition, Chastity Clark. So who'll be speaking in opposition at the appropriate time. Mr. Corley and Ms. Douglas, I'll read some identifying information into the record. We'll conduct the parole interview, the clemency interview with Mr. Corley. We'll hear from the folks who've indicated they'd like to speak. The practice is we'll ask for Mr. Corley's statement before we turn it over to you, Ms. Douglas. Is that okay with you for your closeout?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So, Mr. Corley, you're here this afternoon seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in November 1999 in the 1st Judicial District, Caddo Parish, to a life sentence for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Freeman. Would you answer his questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. How old are you?
53,
Okay, and how long have you been in prison on this charge?
over 24 years.
Okay, tell me what happened. I'm reading and I've read all of the reports and I see a bunch of different statements and stories change. So you tell me the true story of what happened to that child.
Yes, sir. On the night I was watching the kids, it was Billy, Josh, and Serenity, which was the 3 kids I was watching. Billy started acting up. He took the baby doll away from Serenity. So I told him to go to his corner, and he had told me no. So I told him again to go to his corner, but he didn't want to go to his corner. He wanted to go into his brother's corner. So when he started to come running around, I went to swing him around me, but he tripped on the sofa cushion. In the process of that, he hit the sofa and was knocked out and lost his breath. When he came through, he was throwing up and all, and I thought he was all right. And apparently he wasn't, because he had passed away 3 days later.
Okay. Looking at your statement at the time that you were arrested, you told detectives that he tripped on some cushions and fell against a wooden frame of the couch.
Yes, sir.
You heard grunting noises and he was throwing up. You stated a short time later, you made another statement and you said you knew he was hurt, but you didn't call for help. Is that true? Did you know the child was injured and you didn't call 911?
Yes, sir. I thought he was all right because he was just throwing up.
Okay. Also that the doctors found bruising around the head and you said you tapped him on the head sometimes to make him listen. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
I mean, this child, according to the report from medical, he had been being abused. Did you abuse this child on other occasions?
No, sir.
Okay. So what is this corner thing when they misbehaving? You make them go stand in the corner?
It's like a timeout, sir. Like a timeout. They face the corner. They can't see the TV or nothing.
Okay, and then I mean, according to your statement, you just slung him into the couch and he hit the wooden frame.
Yes, I went to turn him around, and I guess I went with too much force when I went to turn him around that way, and he tripped on the cushion and hit that sofa.
So, and then when you was going to check on him when he went to bed, that's when you noticed something was wrong with him?
That was 3 days later, sir. I went to go check, and he wasn't responsive. He died 3 days later.
Well, he died 3 days after this event. He never noticed nothing was wrong with this child.
That's right, sir.
You've taken a lot of classes. What class have you learned the most?
It would probably end up being victim awareness, sir.
What did you learn from victim awareness?
I learned that my actions just did not affect the primary victim, but it affected everybody else, the community, and the people who was living around us.
Okay. All law enforcement is opposed. Your family is unopposed. You have 2 children. Do you have any contact with them?
Yes, sir.
They come see you on a regular basis?
They come see me every now and then. One of them lives in Alabama, and the other one is in Louisiana.
Okay. How many disciplinary write-ups have you had?
One, sir.
Okay, and what was it for?
Misuse of state computer, theft of state paper.
What you
Gambling.
did?
Sir,
What was that about?
I was playing fantasy football. I did a fantasy football league, and I was also doing my hobby craft stuff on it, and letter writing, personal letter writing on them.
Okay. You have any contact with this child's family anymore?
No, sir.
It says you didn't think you'd really done nothing wrong because it was an accident, but that you pled guilty because the district attorney said he was going to charge you with first-degree murder. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And it says you contacted with police every step of the way, yet it took 2 or 3 different versions and stories before the truth came out. Is that true?
Not to my recollection. I told them the same thing over. I didn't know I was the cause of it until after they told me.
So you claim there was never no intent to hurt any of the children.
No, sir, I never intended to hurt the kids.
Well, how hard were you slapping them on the head that it left marks?
It wasn't, how would you say? It was a tap on the head, and they didn't do it all the time. And it wasn't
Tap on the
forceful.
head, but it was noticeable to medical personnel.
It wasn't forceful or nothing, sir.
You ever had any history of alcohol or drug abuse?
No, sir.
Have you ever used alcohol or drugs?
I drank every now and then, and I never did drugs.
Warden, what do you have to say about Mr. Corley?
He has an excellent disciplinary report here. He took some classes. He's a low-risk tiger. And he also had taken a class called Take It a Personal Responsibility. My first time seeing it. And that's it.
I have nothing further.
Suresh.
Mr. Corley, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
For the record, I'm going to read a small portion of the autopsy report of the 2-year-old that was left in your care. Your girlfriend was working a night shift at Walmart. You also worked at Walmart, but for some reason, you have been terminated or you quit your job, and you were the primary caregiver for the 3 children. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to read a small portion of the autopsy report. On February 1st, 1999, an autopsy was performed on a 2-year-old victim by the Caddo Parish Coroner's Office. After completion of the autopsy, detectives met with the coroner, Dr. George McCormick, to review the results. Dr. McCormick advised detectives he was ruling the death of the child a homicide. Dr. McCormick indicated he discovered a large amount of blood in the abdomen of the victim, likely caused by a type of strong blow to that area. Severe bruising was located beneath the child's skull, which could not be seen externally. The victim's brain suffered severe injury and was swollen to the size of an adult brain. It was a clear indication of repeated head trauma. The victim's right lung and diaphragm was also bruised. Chest injuries. A portion of the victim's intestine was so severely injured, they were not functioning properly. Dr. McCormick also located a hole in the child's stomach, indication that he was likely been struck on more than one occasion in this area. The child's teeth were severely rotten. His eyes were sunken into his head, indicating that he had suffered severe pain for some time. The victim's feet were hyperextended, which is a common sign of head injury. Severe bruising was also noted over a large portion of his body. Does this sound like a child who tripped over a pillar and ran into a couch?
No, sir, it doesn't sound like that.
And you were the primary caregiver, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Your girlfriend stated that they had not been babysitted by anyone else but you the last couple of weeks. So how did this child end up with such severe injuries throughout his body?
Sir, later on in that report, Mr. McCormick also said it could have happened by that blow. But
Sir, when you were confronted with the autopsy report, you told the detectives when you started crying that you slung the child through the air onto the couch and he hit the wooden portion of the couch.
Yes,
Am I
sir.
not correct? Am I not correct?
Yes, sir.
So you slung the child through the air. You knew he was hurt and you did get medical assistance. That is your own words, Mr. Corley.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Roche. All right, let's hear from the Parole Project, Mr. Myers.
Good afternoon, Kerry Myers, Louisiana Parole Project. We're here for Robert Corley, who we've accepted as a client in our program should he get a recommendation today. Mr. Corley has an exceptional record since he's been incarcerated. He has taken multiple programs. He has attended NOBTS. He has one disciplinary write-up in 24 years. He has a stable place to live once he would complete our program. He has family support. Mr. Corley has been a Class A trustee. He is very talented. He has multiple, he builds furniture. He's won awards at the rodeo for his furniture building. He's got skills. He's capable of supporting himself. We will provide him the services that he needs upon his transition. 24 years, obviously, he's been incarcerated, has taken him out of the mainstream, and we will help him get mainstream back into society. We'll make sure he has access to services. We make sure he has all his documentation. We'll make sure he learns the technology that he needs to function properly. Mr. Corley's again, his record is commendable. One disciplinary write-up in 24 years, a Class A trustee for any number of years, Bible college graduate. And now, he is, he's here asking this board to see who he is today. And we would support Mr. Corley and ask his recommendation today.
Thank you. All right, let's hear from the family, Ms. Tanya Hachowski.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Hachowski, and I'm Robert Corley's sister. I'm speaking on behalf of Robert Corley because I believe he should be given the opportunity to be granted clemency and given the opportunity of freedom outside of Angola. I can remember growing up with Robert. He was a well-rounded kid. When we were not doing chores, we were outside doing things like fishing or swimming, riding our bicycles or playing basketball and hide and seek, and we can't forget football. Robert was all about football. Everything revolved around it, actually. He would get all of us kids together, and if we didn't have enough players, I would be the all-time quarterback. He was one of the top football players at his high school, and he even played minor league football when he was out. He was able to use his skills for playing football for Angola to help win them some Crunch Bowl games. And then he did mention to me, even though he had found himself in Angola, he expressed how sorrowful he was about what had happened. However, Robert didn't sit idle while he was serving his time. He's learned new skills such as woodworking, occasional paintings, learning new trades such as Braille, of course, woodworking and making wooden fishing lures. He's currently in Bible college, from what I understand, and a couple of classes away from what I'm told. Our family's just waiting for the day that he's released so that we can come together and celebrate him, and have others like the kids who haven't got to meet him actually get to meet him. He also mentioned to me that when he got out that he was going to beat me in bass fishing. So I wouldn't like more than anything to do than have my brother have that opportunity to try to beat his little sister. And that's it.
And Brandy Payne.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. What would you like us to know?
Yeah. I would like y'all to know that Robert Corley is my fiance. I met Robert back in the summer of 1988, and first time I saw him, I fell in love, and as the summer went on, I just kept falling deeper in love. He was a football player, and that was a lot revolved, but I told him I can play tackle football too, but I was actually a cheerleader. So I told him I would cheer him on, but we would go down to the ball field in Wadley, and we would actually play ball because he would throw it to me and I would try to outrun him, but I couldn't. But it was fun. He would play. There's times that I would be upset over family issues because we were young, and he would talk to me and help me get out of that situation of being mad or angry. And I would joke with him and he would joke back with me. And I love that because a lot of people, when I joke, they take me too serious, but he knew how to joke back. We actually lost contact. I got married in 1990 and I couldn't find him. And in 1991, I found out he was divorced or getting a divorce, but he came back for me and I was married. So he loved me and my family enough that he wouldn't break up the marriage as much as I would wanted it to, my selfishness, but he couldn't do it. And so I went, and in 1996, I divorced. And from then until 2014, I was out looking for him. I was trying to find Robert, my one true love. I felt like the universe was keeping us apart. But when I did find him, I found him where he's at now in prison. And it broke my heart. But he went to tell me what happened.
Seems like we've lost
to
the.
Billy. And he was hurt that you don't really supposed to show feelings there. But he cried. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We're having some audio issues on our end where you're breaking up really bad.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Can you hear me better like this?
It's about the same. So I guess I'll ask you to wrap it up for us if you would. We'll try to hear the best we can.
Yeah. Okay. When I met Robert in 2000, well, refound him in 2014. He's where he's at now in prison. It broke my heart knowing where he's at. But he told me about what happened to Billy. And he was hurt and he felt very remorseful. It was heartbreaking to hear that story, what happened. And he said that you really can't show your true feelings, like I guess the softer side of you, the sentimental part. But he cried, and my heart breaks, and I cried for him. My mom, my sister, and my brother, they loved him, always treated him like family. They always knew how I felt about him. I told him after I divorced in 96 that I couldn't run to anybody but him, and I'd run away from everyone else.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Payne, can you wrap it up for us,
and my
please? can you wrap it up for us, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'm asking if he can get clemency to come home. I have 4 kids that love him and adore him. And I have a home I built for him and I. And my kids, us will help him mentally, emotionally, financially, anything he needs, we'll make sure that he gets. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the comments. All right, we'll hear from the opposition now. Can we hear from Ms. Chastity Garvin, please?
Can you hear me?
Ma'am, we can.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak. I just want to say, my son was Billy. He was the victim. And this crime was obviously more, it was very violent, and he was only 2 years old. There's no excuse. There's no reasoning. I do believe that Robert committed this crime on an accident. You know, I don't think he intended to hurt my child, but he had 2 or 3 days with Billy being sick that he could have said something. I've even asked him if I should take him to the hospital because I thought it was just a stomach virus. I had no idea. And he told me, you know, it's probably not a big deal. It's okay. We, you know, gave him Pedialyte and just did the best we could, thinking it was, or I did, thinking it was a stomach virus. And he knew the whole time he could have saved his life. And even after Billy did pass, we had to go through a week or so waiting for the autopsy report. And during that week, he went with me and my family, and we made the funeral arrangements. And he just tagged along and acted like everything was okay. And he knew the whole time what had happened. I feel like that in itself is more of the crime than what he did to my son. Because no matter what, he's gone. He won't come back. My children that were there and the children that followed are all affected by it. My entire family, of course. It's changed the way we think and the way we are with our children and with other people. And it's just more grand than second-degree murder. And I feel like also in the courts and everything, he was being charged with first-degree murder. And he decided to take the plea for second degree to not get the death penalty. Well, when he agreed to that plea, he agreed to the life in prison. So in my opinion, that's what he should serve. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We appreciate your input. All right, Mr. Corley, before we turn it over to Ms. Douglas, is there a statement you'd like to make to us?
Yes, ma'am. I hope you don't mind if I read it because first of all, I want to thank this board for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Words cannot express the regret I have for what happened to Billy. I cannot stand before you and tell you how regretful I am because this is not enough. There's not a day that goes by without me feeling shame or remorseful because of my actions to Billy, his family, and the community involved. I take full responsibility for the death of Billy. Because of my actions, Billy and his family were deprived of what should have been a normal life. I can never replace the hurt and the pain that I've caused to Billy and his family. And I realize remorse is more than words and feelings. It's about what are you going to do to correct this problem. So I look back into my life and I fix these problems, and I apologize for every hurt that I have caused. Since my incarceration, I made a promise to my mother, who passed away in June, to God and myself that I would become a better person and use Billy's death to bring some good into the world to help those who need help. Through faith, education, and life skill classes available at Louisiana State Penitentiary, I have accomplished this promise and will continue to keep my promise. I would like to thank the Department of Corrections for giving me the opportunity to better myself with classes such as anger management, 100 hours trauma healing, and victim awareness, and many more. Also to the community, law enforcement, judiciary system, and my family, I apologize for the ripple effect that my crime has caused, and I will always be regretful and remorseful and hope that one day everyone can forgive me. Finally, for the reasons above and many more, it is in my prayer that the board may grant me mercy and give me a favorable recommendation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Douglas.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, I'd like to offer my deepest condolences to Miss Arvin and her family. Mr. Corley sits before this board today as a reformed man. As you've heard over and over again, he has worked on himself while he's been incarcerated. Mr. Myers pointed out that he's only had one disciplinary report in 24 years in prison, which is astounding, as this board, I'm sure, is well aware. While he's been there, he's taken classes, even when it's been very difficult. Mr. Corley spent the first 18 years of his incarceration as an orderly in Camp J, and the offerings for classes at Camp J are few and far between and often repeat themselves, so he can't take unique classes. Despite that, he took everything that was available to him at Camp J, and when Camp J closed and he was able to move, he started taking more and more classes, became enrolled in the Bible college, and worked on his other skills. He's leaving, if he leaves prison, he's leaving prison with skills to support himself. He's waiting on a favorable certificate for his accomplishments as a Braille transcriber, which is a profession that can support him no matter where he chooses to reside. He's also 2 classes away from earning his BA in Christian ministry, living up to his promise to use Billy's death to help other folks. Mr. Corley also has the love and support of his family and his extended family. He, if granted clemency, will be surrounded by the folks who came here to speak today, as well as their children and their children's children. He has a large amount of support and people who really want to see him stay on the right path. As Mr. Myers said, he's been accepted into the parole project, and when he has completed their programming, he has a permanent place to go and a permanent job where he can stay until he can either support himself through his transcription business or moves on to a different endeavors. Mr. Corley is self-motivated. As I mentioned, he spent most of his incarceration at Camp J as an orderly, and was motivated to take all of the classes available to him there. He currently serves as a role model for other incarcerated folks. He leads the 100 hours release programming that is required by everyone who is leaving Angola. As his sister mentioned, he's been the leader of football clubs. And he has used the skills that he's developed in his hobby craft to give back to the community, often donating pieces of art and furniture to be auctioned off to help other nonprofits. Mr. Corley effectively lost his adult role models when he was very young. After the accident of his stepfather and then the accident of his biological mother, making both of the adults in his home disabled, he stepped up and really lived under the pressures of being the role model for the rest of the family. In prison, he's grown back into that person, a person who can be seen as a role model and a person who leads others. I think he's a person now that his stepfather and his mother would be proud of. He is certainly a different person now than he was when he entered prison 24 years ago. We ask that this board recommend commutation with immediate parole eligibility for Mr. Corley, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, I think we're prepared to vote. Mr. Freeman will be voting first.
Okay, Mr. Corley, quite frankly, I don't think you take any responsibility whatsoever for your crime. This went on a lot longer than it's said to be. It wasn't just that one incident, according to the autopsy report. And you hadn't served for 25 years, so my vote is to deny.
Mrs. Jackson. All right, Mr. Corley, the crime itself is pretty bad. It would have helped if you had been more honest with us. That baby did not get injured by that one-time act. The injuries were too extensive on his body. You know, sometimes the pressure of caring for children can be overwhelming. And, you know, sometimes if you say, I just lost, but you didn't do that. You made it look like this was just some, you know, small thing and surprised the child died. So even though you've done a lot of good things, and I commend you for those, don't think you're quite there yet. Saying your day won't come, but today is not the day. And so because of the nature of the offense and your not accepting responsibility on vote today is to dinner. Mr. Roche.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Corley, I listened to Mr. Karen Myers, and I have all the respect and wealth of Mr. Myers. You've done everything that you could. You only have one disciplinary write-up. You have programs. You've done everything right. But accept responsibility for what you did. It wasn't until the autopsy was revealed that you told the detectives what you did. And you came here today, Mr. Freeman started to question you, and you thought we didn't have the information. And you gave them the same story that you gave them originally. It was not until I revealed the autopsy report that I knew about, and your confession that you knew about, but you didn't think I knew about. You just refused to take responsibility. And to complete your rehabilitation, because you have the advanced degrees, you have the programs, you have the community service, you have a good disciplinary record. But you've got to come to reality that you were responsible for the death of a 2-year-old because you were angry. And this went on for a long period of time. Once you do some mind searching and come to realization that you're totally responsible, then full rehabilitation can occur. But until such time, I'm going to deny your request based on a lack of responsibility, insufficient time served, and express opposition. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Corley, you've received 3 votes to deny your application. So, you know, it requires 4 favorable votes for a favorable decision. You didn't get that today. So today, sorry, your application for clemency has been denied. Good luck.
Thank you.